Someone once told me, wars don't start with explosions. They start with silence.
Mariupol блокирован со всех сторон.
Russians have entered the city. The war has begun, and we have to tell its story.
My youngest daughter at that point was 6 months old, and it was a very hard decision. And we saw all the doctors and firefighters and police working in absolutely impossible environments. Not just impossible to work, sometimes it's impossible to survive. And they kept working. We felt that we can't stop working too, because it's not only an editorial obligation, it's also a civil duty.
Покажите этому путинскому хуйлу вот эти глаза вот этого ребенка и плачущих врачей. Пидор гнойный, чтоб он сдох. Сучара.
This was, and it still is, the crucial moment in Ukrainian history and in the history of Ukrainian society. So it had to be recorded. The whole conflict journalism work for me started in Ukraine in 2014. None of the Ukrainian journalists were conflict journalists. No, we just found ourselves in 2014 in the middle of the war zone. To report from your country and see your home being destroyed is heartbreaking, is nerve-wracking. We tried to tell the story of Mariupol in a way that we bring the audience within the city, with the feeling that every single minute a bomb could hit and kill you.
У нас нет электричества, у нас ничего есть, у нас нет ничего, медикаментов, ничего нет.
The most devastating parts of this siege was a siege of information. So, as I said, there was no connection, and people without communication, they start to panic. The whole society collapses. So that was a deliberate tactics that Russia employed in Mariupol. The story of Mariupol cannot be told without a story of how propaganda tried to change reality.
Девочки, потихонечку, все пролетело. Мама, что? Заходите.
Тихо, тихо, спокойно, без паники.
At that point, everything was very clear. We were nearby, and then we heard an airplane, and the airplane flew above our heads and dropped the bombs, and then we ran to a place where it dropped the bombs, and it was a maternity hospital. And we saw all the injured people. Doing this work for a long time, I know how sometimes frustrating it is to know ultimately that it doesn't really do much. You can't stop a bullet with a camera. You can't, stop a bleeding. The wars don't really stop when whatever you publish. But when people of Mariupol saw the film, when Ukrainians went to cinemas and spoke to me after they watched the film, they told me they see hope there. And I was so surprised. Where exactly did you see hope? And they said, well, don't you see, everyone who suffers in this film, when people are going through the worst times of their life, through the loss and pain, they are never alone. There is no one ever alone. If Ukraine collapses, God forbid this happens, but if Ukraine collapses, the Europe is the next. And 20 Days in Mariupol is a way to tell that to European audience as well. To say that Mariupol is a town, is a city, very similar to any other European city. You know, it could be Brussels,